Are you like me and you planned on delivering vaginally and then you found out you're going to be having a C-section and were totally freaked out because you had no information and you did not know what to expect and you were just really scared? If so, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to talk about what to expect with a C-section, what the recovery is like, and how much contact you're going to have with your baby afterwards. Hello and welcome. My name is Jenny. I am a teacher, a mom, and a doctoral student, and I'm also expecting baby number 2 sometime in July. In this video, I'm going to talk all about the C-section process, the recovery process, and any of my little tips and tricks for how to be feeling better fast. So the first thing I wanted to start off by telling you is the fact that there is absolutely nothing wrong delivering with a C-section. If that is the option that will get your baby here healthy, that's what you should do. So for me, I didn't have a choice. I went in, my baby was footling breech, and there was no way that she was going to be delivered in time because my water was already broken. Okay, so the first thing you want to know about a C-section is do not panic. I swear it's gonna be okay. You're gonna have a healthy baby at the end, fingers crossed, and it's not nearly as horrifying and horrific as everyone says. So, the way that my C-section process worked, I'm going to talk about mine because that's the experience that I had. Every hospital might be a little bit different, but I'm just going to talk about how it went for me and what you might be able to expect. So the first thing they're going to do is take you into labor and delivery, and you are going to be monitored. They'll strap something to your stomach and give you that IV in your hand usually. And I'll put a picture here of how glamorous I looked waiting for my C-section. This was just after I found out that I'd be having a C-section. So once you have that IV, you're gonna hang out for a little bit. They will wheel you back to the OR when they're ready for you, and your partner or your husband or whatever will sit outside and they will scrub up. They'll be putting on scrubs while you are taken into the OR. I actually walked into the OR. They had me walk into the OR, sit down on the operating table, and then they had me turn towards the outside and then lean over so that the anesthesiologist could access my spine. And so they give you the spinal. They do a numbing shot first, and then they actually give you the spinal shot. I will say, to be perfectly honest, the spinal shot wasn't that bad, although the part that was hard for me was they said, okay, I need you to not move. I said, okay, I'm not gonna move. And then of course, you know, it's a needle in your back. How can you not move a little bit? So I think I just did something like, you know, just tensed a little bit, and he was like, don't move. But it was fine. I mean, everything went fine. It was very quick. So don't panic about the spinal, because the spinal was nothing. The spinal, I mean, it was a pinch for a second, and then once you have that spinal, they'll have you turn, lie down on the table, and for me, I was kind of posed in a T, and they had little straps, but I was not strapped down. Some hospitals might strap you down, but mine just had little hooks, and I just put my hand through the hook and was holding on to the fabric. And so once I was in position, they put the sheet up, and then my husband was able to come in and sit next to my head. And then what my OB did is he basically pinched my skin and said, is there anything that you can feel? And you do feel it, but you don't feel the pain. You feel just kind of like there is someone touching you, but there's no pain there. And so after that, they put in the catheter. I did feel that, and it was weird. It didn't hurt, it just was uncomfortable, and I could tell that it was uncomfortable. The catheter was probably my least favorite part, other than the IV in my hand. So they put in the catheter, and then they go ahead and start the procedure. Again, you don't feel anything, or you shouldn't. Hopefully you don't feel anything. Just a lot of pressure and moving things around, but you don't feel any pain. So they did the C-section procedure. I got to hear my daughter cry. They showed me Alice. She was doing great, so I'll put a picture here of Alice with a big old bow on her head, looking super cute. The only thing that I will say is a drawback during the C-section is that usually during C-sections, they do not allow dad or partner to cut the umbilical cord. Now I have heard there's some hospitals that will do clear sheets. For me personally, I think that would freak me out. So I'm kind of glad that it was just a regular old blue sheet. But they get baby out, they'll weigh baby, and then they'll bring baby immediately over to you. And usually, if baby is healthy, they'll put baby straight on your chest, and you get to have baby on your chest while they are stitching you up. For me, however, my daughter went to the NICU because she was born at 34 weeks, so I didn't get to keep her on my chest, but I did get to see her before she went, and my husband was allowed to go with her. So that's something else too. If they happen to need to take baby, they might let your partner go with baby. So that was something that I was really grateful for. Honestly, I felt like the stitching up process took longer than the whole rest of the C-section. Maybe it's just because I was anxious and ready to get out of there, but it seemed like that took longer. Once you have been stitched up, they will wheel you over to basically like a recovery space. For my hospital, it was a sheet in a little recovery area where they can monitor you to make sure everything is okay. I was still on the same floor as where my operation was. I just was hanging out there, I guess, for an hour so they could monitor me. They did at this point give me ice chips. I was starving. I was really, really hungry. I had been at the hospital since 9 a.m. that morning. My C-section was at 4. Now they tell you on purpose not to eat, and that's very important because if you eat and then you have that spinal, sometimes it can make people vomit, and I can't think of anything worse than vomiting while having an open wound across your stomach or your abdomen. So just follow their directions with food. But they gave me ice chips. I was able to eat the ice chips and keep them down. So basically at that point, you're just kind of hanging out waiting to go up to your mother-baby room. Now typically, if your baby is not in the NICU, baby would be with you. And the lady that was next to me, there was a sheet, but the lady that was next to me, I could hear her baby. So they give you baby immediately in recovery. You have baby with you the whole time. After they watch you in recovery, they send you to whatever your mother-baby floor or area is, and you get your own room, and baby will be in the room with you. Now let's talk a little bit about recovery, because this is really when recovery starts. You're still on the spinal up to this point, and you can't really feel much of anything. For my hospital, they put these like almost like massager things on my legs to compress my legs to make sure that blood flow was continuing and that I wouldn't get blood clots in my legs. So in that period, I would say that the time once you get to mother-baby room and maybe 2-3 hours after that spinal wears off is when some of the pain will set in. Obviously, you just had a major abdominal surgery. Some pain is to be expected. So I would say the pain on a scale of 1 to 10 was probably a solid 6 for the first 2 hours. After that, it really goes down very quickly. It really was only fairly bad immediately after the spinal came off and before I could start the medication that they would give me. When I was in the recovery room, the times that hurt the most, and this is what you can expect too, are the times when they are rolling you on your side to change out the basically like a pad underneath you, because you are bleeding. Even though that you delivered by C-section, you still will bleed. And so when the nurses come to roll you over to change that pad out, that to me was the most uncomfortable part. And so that was the only part that was very, very uncomfortable, but it didn't last very long. And I'm gonna be honest, I felt better by, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours later. I was okay. Okay, so let's talk about some recovery tips, because recovery tips are super important for what to know and what to prep. So as far as recovery tips go, my #1 tip, my single biggest tip for you is once you have feeling back in the bottom half of your body, as soon as you feel ready and the nurses feel that you're ready, get up and walk around as much as you can. Even if that's just 2 steps. 3 steps, 5 steps, whatever you can do. The sooner you get up walking, the sooner you're going to feel better. By day 2, I was walking all the way down to the NICU to see my daughter without any support. Was it a little bit sore and uncomfortable? Sure. But I really truly feel that my recovery went a lot faster because of the fact that I got up walking very quickly. The other piece of advice I will give you is wear loose fitting clothing. Do not bring some fancy designer outfit that has leggings and, you know, some fitted top. You are going to be in pain. Every time you go to the bathroom and you have to pull those leggings down over your incision, it's going to hurt. So I highly recommend you bring some dress. I know for me, for part of the time, I literally just wore like a nightgown and I didn't have anything on my bottom just because I didn't want that pressure there. Something else I highly recommend for quicker recovery is actually just taking the medication that they give you. Take what they give you up to what you need. I know for me, I was offered Percocet and then an ibuprofen that give you both of them. So I would say for the first 48 hours, I took both. But then honestly, I felt like I only needed the ibuprofen and that was all that I needed. I did go home with a prescription of Percocet and I think, to be honest, I took it once. One other strange tip that I will give you is once you take a shower, which they'll ask you to, you know, take a shower, get your bandages really soaking wet so that you can take them off. And that was probably the day after my surgery that I took my shower and I changed out of the hospital gown and into my own clothes, is get it soaking wet, take off the bandages, but then there's actually this Goo Gone that I would highly recommend that's for bandage adhesives. And the reason I recommend it is because even when those bandages come off, you're still gonna have that residue, even if you have a pretty good shower, because that area is so tender or numb, depending on the area of it, that it's hard to get all of the residue from the bandages off. So I highly recommend that you bring some sort of adhesive remover for skin. So I'll put a picture of the Goo Gone stuff that I was recommended by my doctor here. I'm definitely going to be putting it in my hospital bag this time. The most painful part for me was pulling up and pulling down those mesh underwear every single time I needed to use the bathroom, because they would get stuck to the adhesive even after the shower. The last piece of advice I really want to give you is to make sure you ask for or take the stool softeners as soon as you're offered. Maybe it's TMI, but the first bowel movement you have after your C-section is excruciating, especially if you have not been taking those stool softeners. So definitely, if they don't offer them to you immediately, request them, because it is like, I felt like my insides were being ripped apart, and I thought my scar was gonna or my stitches were gonna split open or something. They didn't, and I'm fine. But that is something that's definitely worth mentioning as well. One other tip that I almost forgot, really, really important. Laughing and coughing really, really hurts when you have a C-section, even when you go home. So I would recommend having a pillow over your scar if you are laughing or coughing. One final thing I wanted to mention. Now that I'm a year past from my C-section, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you can expect long-term as far as the scar goes. Honestly, if you have a really good C-section doctor, that scar is so low that it's gonna be below your bikini line. For me, you can't even see it in most underwear that I wear. I would have to get a super low rise pair of underwear for you to even see the scar, and the scar is maybe this long. Okay, finally I wanted to mention how long I was in the hospital, because a lot of people are curious how long they will be in the hospital. So I had my C-section on Thursday at 4 p.m. and I was allowed to go home on Sunday. They said that I could stay if I wanted until Monday, but I chose to go home on Sunday instead. So I left Sunday around 1 p.m. and I'm hoping for my second C-section, if I wind up having a C-section this time, that my stay will be even shorter. All this to say, if you're having a C-section, do not panic. It's going to be okay. It is not as scary of a process as some people make it sound. Maybe for some people it is. And I know there's people who have traumatic C-section experiences. However, generally speaking, it is a safe way to deliver your baby if it is the medically necessary way to deliver your baby. So it's going to be okay, I promise. Don't feel like you're anything less than if you're told that you might have to get a C-section. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm going to be posting lots of new videos about pregnancy, motherhood, and childhood development, and I would love to have you stop by and learn something with me. I will see you next time. Take care.